The air in the garage was thick enough to drink. A heavy cocktail of 90-degree Visayan humidity, the ghost of gasoline, and the sharp, metallic tang of WD-40. Outside, the familiar sounds of a Sunday afternoon in Ceylon played out. Distant put-put of a passing tricycle, the lazy crow of a neighbor's rooster, and the cheerful shouting of children playing tumbang presso down the street. Inside, under the corrugated tin roof, my world was silent save for the tiny, satisfying click of the socket wrench in my hand. My universe was reduced to a single bolt on the carburetor of a 1975 Toyota Corolla. For 4 years, this car had been my sanctuary and my obsession. To my family, it was the junk pile, that old wreck, or as my father, Renato, liked to call it, your pile of rusty problems. But to me, it was Lolo's last gift. It was her. And she was almost perfect. Her body, once a patchwork of rust and faded potential, was now a deep, gleaming cherry red, the color of a ripe manzanitas fruit. I'd spent 6 months of my savings from the internet cafe just on the paint job, done by a professional in San Jose, because that was one skill I couldn't master from YouTube tutorials. But everything else was me. Every sanded panel, every patched piece of upholstery, every polished chrome emblem that I had hunted down in dusty surplus shops in Iloilo City. My knuckles were a roadmap of small scars and calluses, a testament to slipped wrenches and stubborn bolts. I wore them with more pride than my sister, Laia, wore her expensive bracelets. The wrench gave one last, final turn. The bolt was snug. I leaned back on my heels, wiping a smear of grease from my cheek with the back of my wrist, and admired my work. The engine bay was immaculate. It wasn't just functional. It was a work of art, a clean, beautiful, mechanical heart ready to beat. Again, my Lolo Ben would have been proud. I could still feel him here in the garage, his presence as real as the smell of old oils soaked into the concrete floor. He was the one who had seen the spark in me. While my Tate despaired over his grease monkey daughter who preferred tools to makeup, Lolo Ben had encouraged it. He was a mechanic in the army back in his day, and he said I had the touch. I remembered the day he'd brought the car here, towed by a friend's jeepney. I was 19. The Corolla was a sad thing then, a faded yellow with rust eating through the wheel wells. It hadn't run in a decade. It's for you, Hijakeo, my grandfather had said, his voice raspy but his eyes bright. He pressed a set of keys and a folded, brittle document into my hand. She needs a good heart to bring her back. My father had scoffed. Ben, what is she going to do with that? It's scrap metal. I'll call Mang Berdo to haul it away. No, Lolo had said, his voice firm, cutting through my father's dismissal. He looked at me, not at my father. Maya knows what to do. She sees what's there. Not just what is, but what can be. Later that afternoon, after my father had gone inside to watch television, Lolo sat with me on overturned paint cans in front of the car. He handed me the folded document again. It was the original certificate of registration and a notarized, open-ended deed of sale with his signature at the bottom. This is the most important part. Maya, he had whispered, tapping the paper. The story of the car, her name, this makes her yours. Not your Tete's, not anyone else's. I already signed the transfer of ownership. You just have to bring it to the LTO when you're ready. It is in your name. Mia Arsantes, a car without. Its papers is just a fancy decoration. A car with its papers. That's freedom. He passed away 6 months later. And in the silence of my grief, the Corolla became more than just a project. It became my connection to him. Working on it was like having a conversation with his ghost. Every time I solved a problem, I could almost hear his gruff, approving chuckle. Every setback was a lesson he was teaching me from afar. The work was slow and painstaking. My savings were meager. while my sister Laya, younger by 5 years, spent her allowance on new clothes from the city, on milk tea with her friends, on loading her phone for endless hours of TikTok. I saved every peso. My earnings from tutoring high school kids in math and my part-time job at the local internet cafe went into a large tin can hidden in my closet. 1 month's savings might buy a new set of spark plugs. Another 3 months for a new water pump. I had to order from a supplier in Manila. The physical labor was intense. I learned to weld from a cranky old man who ran a small machine shop near the market, trading my help with his inventory for lessons. He was as tough as my Lolo and twice as loud, but he taught me how to lay a clean bead of molten steel. I spent one entire summer, during the hottest days of May, sanding the car's body down to bare metal by hand, my arms aching, my skin covered in a fine red dust. My mother would leave plates of rice and adobo on the garage steps, her silent way of showing support. My father's support was less forthcoming. He hated it. Hated the mess, hated the smell, hated the sight of his eldest daughter in oil-stained shorts and an old t-shirt, her hair tied back with a rag. "Look at you, Maya," he said one afternoon, stopping at the garage entrance. I was wrestling with the old, cracked dashboard. "You're 22 years old. You should be learning how to keep a house, not how to fix this thing. No man will want a wife who smells like a jeepney." "I'm not looking for a man today," I'd muttered, not looking up. "I'm busy." "You are always busy with this junk," he'd said, his voice full of disappointment. "Your sister, she is a proper young lady. She has so many friends. She is a beauty. You hide in here with this trash." He'd sighed, a heavy theatrical sound, and walked away. His words were meant to sting, and they did, but the sting always faded. The satisfaction of my work was a balm that healed it. Laya's indifference was almost worse. To her, the garage was a non-place, and the car was invisible. The only time she ever spoke of it was to complain. "Ain't Maya," she'd whine from the doorway, wrinkling her nose. "Can you stop all that banging? I'm trying to make a video." Or, "Ugh, it stinks out here. Tete, tell her to close the door." She had no curiosity, no interest. She couldn't see the transformation happening right in front of her. She just saw dirt and noise. But now, the dirt and noise were gone. All that remained was the beauty. I reconnected the battery, the final step. I took a deep breath, the air tasting of ozone and anticipation. This was the moment. I slid into the driver's seat. The reupholstered vinyl was cool against my skin. The steering wheel, which I'd painstakingly restored, felt solid and real in my hands. The dashboard, once a mess of cracked plastic and dead gauges, was now whole and clean. I'd even managed to fix the original radio. I placed the newly cut primary key into the ignition. It felt sacred. I turned it. The starter motor whirred for a second, and then VROOOM dot, the engine didn't just start. It exploded to life, a deep, throaty, confident roar that echoed in the small garage. It wasn't the sputtering gasp of an old machine. It was the powerful hum of a healthy one. It was the sound of 4 years of my life, my love, my grief, all culminating in this single perfect moment. A wide, uncontrollable grin split my face. Tears pricked my eyes. I revved the engine gently, and the car vibrated with the power I had given it. We did it. Low, I whispered into the rumbling quiet of the garage. We did it. I eased her out of the garage for the first time. In the golden light of the late afternoon, she was even more beautiful. The red paint seemed to drink the light, glowing with a depth that took my breath away. The chrome bumpers and emblems, which had been pitted with age, now shone like mirrors. She wasn't just a restored car. She was a resurrected one. My mother came out of the house, her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide. I, Jinyu KO, she breathed. Maya, it's beautiful. It looks brand new. It runs like it too, nay, I said, my voice thick with pride. Even Maya, drawn out by the sound, looked momentarily impressed. Wow, she said, her eyes scanning the car. It was the first time she had ever looked at it with anything other than disdain. It's actually cool. It looks like one of those vintage cars on Instagram. Her approval, shallow as it was still a small victory. My father came out last. He stood on the porch, his arms crossed, and surveyed the scene. He looked at the car, then at me. He didn't smile. He just gave a curt, noncommittal nod. PH was all he said before turning and going back inside. The dismissal stung, but today it couldn't pierce the armor of my joy. His opinion didn't matter. I knew what I had accomplished. I took my mother for a short drive around the population. The car handled like a dream. The ride was smooth, the engine a powerful murmur. People on the street turned to look. Old men smiled and gave me a thumbs up, recognizing the classic model. For the first time, I wasn't just Maya, the quiet girl who tutored their kids. I was the girl who had brought a classic back from the dead. I felt seen. I felt proud. That night, I parked her back in the garage, her engine ticking softly as it cooled. I gave the hood one last, affectionate pat before covering her with a soft canvas tarp. She was safe. She was finished. She was mine. Back in my room, I took out the small wooden box where I kept my most important possessions. Inside, beneath a few old photographs of me and Lolo, were the papers. The original certificate of registration, fragile and yellowed with age in the crisp, official deed of sale. I unfolded it and read the name, typed neatly on the line. Santos Maya R.I. held the documents in my hand. This was the proof, the story, the freedom. My father could dismiss my work, my sister could ignore it, but these papers spoke a truth that was absolute and legal. This car, this beautiful, resurrected piece of my heart and my history, was mine. And I, in my happy, triumphant bubble, couldn't imagine a world in which that would ever be challenged. A week of quiet pride had passed. A week where I felt, for the first time, like a master of my own small universe. The Corolla sat in the garage, her red paint seeming to pulse with a life of its own, a silent testament to my victory. I'd catch myself just looking at her, a wide, foolish grin on my face. The purr of her engine was the new soundtrack of my life. Today was Laya's graduation party, and I felt a genuine, uncomplicated happiness for my sister. The yard was a riot of color and sound. Blue and white balloons, for her school colors, were tied to the posts of our veranda. The long buffet table was groaning under the weight of my mother's cooking, a whole roasted lechon with skin that crackled if you looked at it, mounds of pancit, lumpia, and a huge bowl of fruit salad. The inevitable karaoke machine was already set up, with one of my uncles singing a heartfelt, off-key version of a Frank Sinatra classic. It was a perfect Filipino celebration, loud, joyful, and full of food. I felt a sense of belonging that had been missing for a long time. I was happy to fade into the background, helping my mother carry plates from the kitchen, content in the knowledge that my contribution to the family was parked just a few feet away. My Tita Maricel, my mother's younger sister, pulled me aside. Near the refreshment table, Maya Haija, I saw the car yesterday when you drove past the market, and ganda. She said, her eyes wide. It looks like it came from a movie. You have a gift from God in those hands of yours. Salamat po, Tita, I beamed. Thank you. The praise felt warm and real. When are you taking me for a ride? She laughed. Anytime you want, Tita, I promised. Laya was the star of The show, of course. She looked beautiful in her white dress, her graduation medal hanging proudly around her neck. She was surrounded by a giggling circle of her friends, taking selfies, her laughter bright and carefree. She was my bunso, my younger sister, and despite our differences, I loved her. I was proud of her. Her future was bright, and I felt like I was finally stepping into my own too. The world felt balanced, symmetrical dot around 3 o'clock. When the party was at its peak, my father picked up the microphone. The karaoke music died down. "Attention, everyone. Attention, please." He called out, his voice booming through the speakers. A hush fell over the yard. My father loved an audience. He stood on the porch, beaming, a proud patriarch surveying his clan. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate with us today," he began. "As you know, today we celebrate my youngest, my baby, my Laya." He gestured to my sister, who blushed and smiled prettily. "She has graduated with honors. She is going to a big university in Manila. She is going to make the Santos family proud." A round of applause. I clapped along with everyone else, a genuine smile on my face. A smart, beautiful young woman. "Like Laya deserves a bright future," he continued, his voice swelling with emotion. "And she needs to be independent. She needs to be able to go out into the world with confidence. So, as her father, I have decided to give her a very, very special graduation gift. A gift to help her on her new journey." He paused for dramatic effect. The air was thick with anticipation. I felt a small, strange knot tighten in my stomach. A vague sense of dread I couldn't name. "He's just being dramatic," I told myself. My father turned and walked back towards the house. I watched him, the knot in my stomach pulling tighter. He didn't look at me. He walked straight to the small wooden keyboard inside the door, the one where we all hung our keys. The hook where, just this morning, I had hung the primary keys to the Corolla, shiny and new. He plucked them from the hook. The world went silent. The sounds of the party, the chatter, the distant traffic, it all faded into a dull, underwater roar. I could only hear the frantic pounding of my own heart. I saw the scene as if through a long tunnel, my father holding my keys, walking back out onto the porch. He held them up, and they glinted in the afternoon sun. He turned towards the garage. "Laya, a knock," he boomed, his voice a sound of pure betrayal. "A vintage car for my vintage beauty, it's yours." He strode to the garage and threw open the doors. There she was, my car, gleaming, perfect, and utterly violated. A collective gasp of admiration went through the crowd. They saw a beautiful car. I saw my heart being ripped out of my chest. Laya shrieked. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated ecstasy. She sprinted across the yard and threw her arms around my father, who laughed and hugged her tightly. Then she ran to the car, my car. She ran her hands over the hood, her face a picture of disbelief and joy. Her friends swarmed around her, all of them screaming and hugging. It was a scene from a movie. A perfect, happy, celebratory scene that was my worst nightmare made real. I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, my feet rooted to the ground. My blood felt like ice in my veins. This wasn't happening. This was a joke, a terrible, cruel joke. I looked around at my family. My Tita Maricel looked at me with wide, pitying eyes, then quickly looked away. My cousins, my uncles, they all glanced at me, then averted their gazes. They knew. They knew it was my car. They had seen me working on it for years. But no one said a word. No one dared to defy my father. I had never felt so utterly, profoundly alone. The public nature of it was the worst part. He hadn't just taken my car. He had taken my work, my story, my connection to my Lolo, and publicly given it to someone else. He had announced to the whole world that my passion meant nothing, that I meant nothing. The applause eventually died down. The music started up again. The party moved on, but I was still frozen in that moment of absolute betrayal. After what felt like an eternity, I managed to unstick my feet from the ground and walked, numb and robotic, into the house. I found my father in the kitchen getting another bottle of Coke from the fridge. He was humming, he was happy. "Tate," I said. My voice was a croak. He turned and his smile faltered when he saw my face. "Oh, Maya, don't look like that. You should be happy for your sister." Happy? The word came out laced with a bitterness that surprised me. "Tate, that's my car. You know, that's my car. Willow gave it to me." He sighed, the happy father vanishing, replaced by the stern, unmovable patriarch. "It's a family car, Maya, and I am the head of this family. I decide. You decided to give away my property?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of grief and fury. "My work. I spent 4 years on that car. I spent all my money." "And you did a good job," he said, in a placating tone that made my skin crawl. "It looks very nice. And now your sister can enjoy it. She needs it for university in Manila. What do you need it for here in Ceylon? To go to the market? Be reasonable? Reasonable?" I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my throat. "It's not about being reasonable. It's about respect. You didn't even ask me. You humiliated me in front of everyone." His face hardened. The placating tone was gone. "Do not raise your voice to me," he said, his voice dangerously low. "I am your father. Everything under this roof is mine, including that car. You owe this family Uten Nalub. We raised you, we fed you, we sent you to school. The least you can do is not be selfish over a piece of metal. A piece of metal." The phrase echoed in the ruins of my heart. He would never understand. To him, it was just an object. To me, it was everything. "That's it?" I whispered. "My work, my time, Lolo's memory, it means nothing?" "Do not be so dramatic," he said, turning his back on me to put ice in his glass. The conversation was over. He had made his decision. I was dismissed. I walked back outside in a daze. The scene by the car was even worse now. Laya was in the driver's seat, her friends piling in. Someone had turned on the radio full blast. She was trying to pull out of the driveway, but she didn't know how to handle a vintage manual transmission. The gears ground with a horrible, painful sound that made me physically flinch. My beautifully tuned engine was being tortured. "Just push the clutch all the way down, Laya." One of her friends shouted from the passenger seat. Laya was laughing, oblivious. "I'll get the hang of it." She yelled over the music. She was holding up her phone, taking a video of herself in the driver's seat. She posted it straight to Instagram. I saw the caption she was typing: "Best grad gift ever, my new baby." Hashtag vintage vibes, not her new baby. My soul shriveled. She didn't see the years of work. She didn't see the love, the history. She just saw a prop, a cool accessory for her new life, a status symbol. My father hadn't just given her a car. He had given her my identity, and she was wearing it as carelessly as a new dress. I couldn't watch anymore. I turned and walked away from the laughter, from the grinding gears, from the music. I walked past my relatives who offered me weak, sympathetic smiles. I walked into the house and into the cool, dark quiet of my bedroom. I closed the door, and the sounds of the party became a distant, mocking thrum. The dam of my composure broke. I sank onto my bed and cried. I cried for my Lolo, for my car, for the years of work, for the casual, brutal way my own father had broken my heart. The tears eventually slowed. The deep, wrenching sobs subsided into a cold, heavy emptiness. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind a blank slate of pain. But then a thought surfaced, a memory. A car without its papers is just a fancy decoration. A car with its papers, that's freedom. I sat up. My movements were slow, deliberate. I went to my closet and took out the small wooden box from the top shelf. I opened it. Inside, beneath the old photos, were the documents. And there was the spare key, the one I had cut myself just in case. I took out the brittle, folded certificate of registration and the deed of sale. I smoothed the papers out on my bed. My name stared back at me, typed in neat capital letters. Santis Maya R. Legal, official. Absolute. My father was the head of the family. But Lolo had been smarter. He had made me the head of the car. My father had given Laya the keys and the car. A fancy decoration. He forgot about the papers. He forgot about the spare key I kept. He forgot who the real owner was. The grief in my chest began to recede, consumed by something else. Something cold and sharp and clear. It was anger, yes, but it was more than that. It was resolve. He said it was just a piece of metal. He said I shouldn't be selfish. I would show him what it meant to respect someone's property. I would show him the difference between a gift and a grand theft. My face was set, my hands steady. The tears were gone. The time for crying was over. The time for planning had begun. The week following the party was a masterclass in cold. Silence. Our house, usually filled with the noise of life, became a tense, quiet space where words were rationed and resentments simmered in the thick, humid air. I moved through it like a ghost. I ate my meals before anyone else was awake or after they had all gone to bed. I spoke only to my mother and only in short, necessary sentences. I avoided my father completely. The sight of him filled me with a quiet rage, so profound it felt like a physical illness. And Laya, I looked right through her. She, in her youthful, self-absorbed bliss, hardly seemed to notice. To her, the car was a new toy, and she played with it with the thoughtless abandon of a child. She drove it to the market for a single bottle of soda, grinding the gears with a sound that made my teeth ache. I found empty chip bags and sticky soda stains on the passenger seat floor mats I had painstakingly shampooed by hand. One afternoon, I noticed a small, jagged scratch on the rear bumper, a silver wound in the perfect red paint. She probably got it trying to park at the mall and hadn't even noticed. Each new desecration was another log on the fire of my resolve. She didn't love the car. She was just consuming it. The final straw came on a Friday afternoon. Laya burst into the house, her voice high and shrill with excitement, her friends trailing behind her. "Eight, Maya. Are you home?" She called out, a fake sweet tone in her voice she only used when she wanted something. I didn't answer. She found me in the kitchen, washing rice for dinner. "Oh, there you are. Hey, so me and my friends are driving too. To be out tomorrow. We're going to stay at that nice beach resort for the weekend. Fun, right?" I continued to run my hands through the rice and water, my face impassive. And I was wondering if you could, give me some gas money? She asked, batting her eyelashes. The audacity of it was stunning. She wanted me to pay for the fuel to drive my car on a trip I wasn't invited on. I slowly looked up from the rice bowl and met her eyes. The coldness in my gaze must have startled her because she took a half step back. "No," I said. The word was flat, final, ooh, whatever. "You're so selfish," she huffed, turning on her heel. "I'll just ask Tete. He'll give it to me." And I knew he would. Later, I heard them all in the living room, laughing and making plans. I scrolled through Laya's Instagram feed on my phone. It was plastered with photos of the car, of her posing against it, of her friends draped over the hood. The latest post was a picture of a map with a line drawn to Tobiao. The caption read, "Road trip. Antique Coast, here we come. So excited for a weekend getaway, menu ride." Hashtag beachbound, hashtag vintage car, hash bless stop my new ride. The phrase echoed in my head. That was it. That was the deadline. She wasn't just going to drive my car. She was going to parade her ownership of it all over the province. My plan, which had been a simmering, theoretical thing, now solidified into a hard, sharp-edged certainty. I knew what I had to do. Not tomorrow. Tonight. My first call was to my cousin, Kuya Marlin, in San Jose. He was my mother's nephew, a few years older than me, a quiet, dependable man who ran his own t-shirt printing business. He had a house with a large walled-in garage that he rarely used. He had always been kind to me, and he had a deep respect for my Lolo Ben. He answered on the second ring. Maya, kumusta? I'm okay, Kuya, I said, my voice low. I was in my room, the door locked. I need a big favor. A very big favor. And I need you to please not ask too many questions. There was a pause on the other end. What kind? A favor? He asked, his voice cautious. I need to store my car, the Corolla, in your garage for a little while. I need to bring it there tonight. Can I do that? He was silent for a long moment. I knew the news of what happened at the party must have reached him through the relentless coconut telegraph of family gossip. The Corolla, he said, his voice neutral. The one Tate Renato gave to Laya. The one Lolo Ben gave to me. I corrected, my voice firm. The one with my name on the title. Please, Kuya, I just need a safe place for it. Another pause. Then a sigh. Okay, Maya, he said softly. The garage is empty. I'll leave the side door unlocked for you. Just be careful, okay? I will, I said, a wave of relief washing over me. Salamat git, Kuya. Thank you so much. Wala Anaman. You're welcome, he understood. Evening fell. The air cooled, and the sky turned a deep, bruised purple. Laya's friends arrived, their laughter and shrieking filling the house. Music started blaring from a Bluetooth speaker in the living room. They were having a pre-party before their road trip. It was the perfect cover. From my bedroom window, I watched them. They piled their oversized weekend bags into the trunk of my car, slamming the lid shut with a carelessness that made me wince. They draped their wet beach towels over the pristine seats I had spent a month restoring. They were treating her like a cheap rental, a disposable object. I had a small backpack ready. Inside were a change of clothes, my wallet, my phone, and the precious folded documents that proved my ownership. I took the single spare key from my wooden box. It felt heavy in my palm, a small piece of metal that held the entire weight of my future. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, but my hands were steady. My mind was clear. I waited. I watched them go back and forth between the car and the house, their silhouettes moving in front of the bright living room windows. The music was loud, the bass thumping through the floorboards of my room. The moment I needed was one of chaos and distraction, and they were providing it in spades. Then it came. Laya called them all back inside. Guys, come on. One last picture before we go, and I have to pee. The group trooped back into the house, leaving the car sitting alone in the driveway, bathed in the yellow glow of the porch light. The driver's side door was unlocked. Laya, in her haste, had forgotten to lock it. A gift. This was it. Now or never. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I slung the backpack over my shoulder and unlocked my bedroom door. I slipped out into the hallway, my socked feet silent on the wooden floors. I could hear them all in the living room, laughing and shouting as they tried to arrange themselves for a group selfie. They were completely oblivious. I walked through the kitchen and out the back door, circling around the side of the house. The night was alive with the sound of crickets and geckos. The air was sweet with the smell of night-blooming jasmine from my mother's garden. It was a beautiful, peaceful night for a revolution. I reached the edge of the driveway. My car was there waiting for me. She looked so beautiful under the light, her red paint like polished blood. For a second, my resolve wavered. The fear was immense. What I was about to do would shatter my family. It would change everything forever. Then I saw it. A cheap, glittery pink air freshener in the shape of a palm tree hanging from the rear view mirror. Laya's. It was such a small, stupid, tacky thing, but it was a violation, a flag planted on conquered territory. The anger surged back, cold and sharp, chasing away the fear. This was not her car to decorate. My steps were silent as I walked to the driver's side door. My hand didn't tremble as I reached for the handle. I pulled it gently. The latch made a soft click. I opened the door, slid inside, and closed it. Behind me, without a sound, I was home. The familiar smell of the restored interior. A mix of vinyl, carpet, and a faint lingering hint of my Lolo's old cigars wrapped around me like a hug. My hands found the steering wheel. I didn't look back at the house, a bright box of noise and betrayal. I looked forward through the windshield at the dark, open road. I put the spare key in the ignition. My key, the one my father had forgotten. I turned it. The engine caught. Instantly, not with a roar, but with a low, confidential rumble. It was a sound only I would recognize, a whisper that was easily swallowed by the thumping bass of the party music. I expertly eased the gear shift into reverse, my foot featherlight on the clutch. The car rolled backwards, silent as a shadow. I maneuvered her out of the driveway and onto the street. I didn't turn on the headlights until I was a block away. Drove through the sleeping streets of my town, my heart pounding with a wild mixture of terror and exhilarating freedom. Every shadow looked like a pursuer. Every distant dog bark seemed like an alarm, but no one came, no one noticed. By the naves. Time I reached the national highway, the tension began to melt away, replaced by a feeling of immense, intoxicating power. I was in control. The drive to San Jose took just under an hour. The windows were down, the cool night air whipping through my hair. The car ran beautifully, her engine a steady, powerful heartbeat. She felt happy to be with me, happy to be free. Found Kuya Marlin's house easily. As promised, the side door to his large garage was unlocked. I pulled the car inside, switched off the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening. I sat there for a long moment in the dark, my hands still, gripping the steering wheel. She was safe. She was mine again. I got out of the car, closed the garage door, and locked it from the inside before letting myself out the side door and locking that too. She was secure. As I stood on the quiet street, a new thought entered my mind. I pictured the scene back. Home, Laya and her friends, finally ready, bags in hand, walking out to the driveway. The shock, the confusion, the frantic searching. And then the inevitable, piercing scream I could hear clearly in my imagination, a scream that would echo all over our small town. Nanako and Kotsi Ko. My car has been stolen. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. Let them think that. Let them panic. Let them call the police. I had the truth folded neatly in my backpack. The battle was over. The war was about to begin. The thin, restless sleep I managed on my cousin's spare mattress did little to quiet the storm in my mind. I woke before dawn, the strange silence of his house in San Jose, a stark contrast to the chaos I knew was unfolding back home. The call came just as the sun began to cast a weak gray light through the jealousy windows. My mother's name flashed. On the screen, I took a deep breath and answered, Maya. Anak Ko. Oh, thank God. Her voice was a frantic, weeping torrent. Where are you? Are you safe? The car. Maya, the car is gone. Your father, he's going crazy. He called the police. He thinks someone stole it from the driveway last night. I let her speak, her panic washing over me. I pictured her in our kitchen, wringing her hands, caught in the crossfire between a furious husband and a defiant daughter. Nay, I said, my voice deliberately calm and even. I had to be the anchor in this storm. I'm okay. I'm safe. Don't worry. But the car, Maya, where is it? What happened? The car is safe too, Nay, I said softly, and it wasn't stolen. There was a moment of confused silence on her end. What do you mean? I'll be home in a little while. I'll explain everything. Just please, Nay, don't worry about me. I ended the call before she could ask more, leaving her with the seed of a new understanding. I was not a victim in this story. I was the author of it. The bus ride from San Jose to Ceylon was a journey through a landscape that was both familiar and alien. I watched the green rice paddies, the lumbering car bows, and the small, colorful houses blur past my window. I had traveled this road 1,000 times, but today it felt different. I wasn't just going home, I was marching into battle. My backpack sat heavy on my lap, the folded legal documents inside feeling like plates of armor. In my mind, I rehearsed my lines, not with the frantic energy of an unprepared student, but with the cold precision of a lawyer preparing for trial. I would be respectful, but I would be unmovable. I would be calm, but I would be absolute. I was no longer the quiet girl who hid her feelings in the garage. That girl was gone, burned away in the fire of my father's betrayal. A new woman was on this bus, and she was on her way to claim her life. As the bus turned down the road to our barangay, my heart began to pound, a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. I could see my house from a distance, and I could see the police car parked out front. A municipal patrol car, its lights off, but its presence as loud as a siren. Just as I had expected, worse than the police car was the small cluster of neighbors, gathered by the sari-sari store across the street, Ambas Mosa, the town gossips. They were pretending to be buying Coke or vinegar, but their eyes were all fixed on my family's home, hungry for drama. My father's private familial authority was about to be challenged on a very public stage. The shame, the haya, would be immense. A small, cruel part of me was glad. He had publicly humiliated me. It was only fair his reckoning was public too. I got off the bus, adjusted my backpack, and began the long walk down the driveway. Every eye was on me. I could feel their stares, hear their whispered speculations. I ignored them all. My focus was on the scene in our garage, the empty space where my beautiful red car should have been my father, my sister Laya, and 2 uniformed police officers stood there in the middle of the oil-stained concrete. Laya's face was blotchy and swollen from crying, a picture of teenage tragedy. My father was pacing back and forth like a caged tiger, his voice a low, angry rumble as he spoke to one of the officers. He saw me first. His eyes widened and his face contorted with a fresh wave of fury. "There," he roared, pointing a trembling finger at me. "There she is, ask her what she's done." Laya looked up, her face a mask of ugly accusation. "Ain't Maya, you did this. You stole my car just to ruin my life." I walked past them, my gaze fixed on the 2 policemen. I gave a slight, respectful nod, Magandang umaga po, officers. "Good morning." The older of the 2 policemen looked at me, his expression a mixture of recognition and weariness. It was Officer Reyes. He'd known our family for years. "Maya Santos," he said, his voice tired. "Your father reported a stolen vehicle." "I heard," I said calmly. "That's why I came home." "Where were you last night? And where is the car?" My father demanded, stepping towards me. I held up a hand, not to him, but to Officer Reyes, a gesture that said, "Let me handle this with the proper authorities." The small act of defiance made my father flinch as if I'd slapped him. "Sir," I said to the officer, my voice clear and steady, cutting through my sister's sobs and my father's rage. "There has been a misunderstanding. The car was not stolen." I shrugged the backpack off my shoulder, unzipped it, and took out the plastic envelope containing my precious documents. I handed them to Officer Reyes. "I am the legal owner of the 1975 Toyota Corolla. License plate number?" I recited the plate number from memory. "This is the original certificate of registration. And this is the notarized deed of sale, transferring ownership from my grandfather, Benjamin Almonte, to me 3 years before his death. As you can see, the car is registered in my name, Maya Arsantis." A thick, heavy silence fell over the garage. Even the neighbors across the street seemed to be holding their breath. Officer Reyes took the documents, his eyes scanning them carefully. He looked at the LTO letterhead, the official stamps, my grandfather's signature, my name. He showed them to his younger partner, who peered at them and nodded. There was no questioning their authenticity. They were legal. They were absolute. Officer Reyes folded the papers carefully and handed them back to me. He cleared his throat, his professional gaze turning to my father. "Mr. Santos," he began, his tone now formal and tinged with embarrassment. "It seems this is not a police matter. According to these documents, the vehicle legally belongs to your daughter, Maya. She has not stolen anything. At most, this is a family dispute over the use of the property. We have no jurisdiction here." My father stared at him, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The logic of the law was a language he did not speak. He only spoke the language of patriarchal power, and it was failing him. What? But I gave it to my other daughter. As a gift. "With all due respect, sir," Officer Reyes said, his patience clearly wearing thin. "You cannot legally give away something that does not belong to you." The public humiliation washed over my father's face. He was being contradicted by an authority figure in front of his neighbors. His word, which had always been absolute law within our home, was shown to be worthless. The color rose in his cheeks. His fury, robbed of a legal target, now turned entirely on me. "Walang haya. Ka," he finally exploded, the words ripping from his throat. "You have no shame? You would do this to me, to your own family? You bring the police to my house to disrespect me? I am your father." This was it, the moment I had been preparing for. I met his furious gaze, and for the first time in my life, I did not look away. My voice, when I spoke, was devoid of heat. It was as cool and sharp as a shard of glass. "And I am your daughter," I said. "Not your property. You talk about respect, Tete. When did you ever show me any? You dismissed my work. You belittled my passion. You stole years of my life and savings and gave it away in a grand gesture to make yourself feel powerful. You didn't give Laya a car. You gave her my work. You gave her my memories of Lolo." I took a step closer, my voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. "You said it was just a piece of metal. You were wrong. It was my heart. And you taught me that if I don't protect my own heart, you will let the whole world trample on it." This is me protecting myself. Laya, who had been watching this exchange with wide, disbelieving eyes, finally understood. The car was gone, for good. Her weekend trip was ruined. Her new status symbol was gone. Her social triumph had become a public, family catastrophe. She let out a wail of pure adolescent despair and ran into the house, slamming the door behind. My father was speechless, his rage rendered impotent by my calm, irrefutable logic. He looked around at the police officers who were now trying their best to look anywhere but at him, at the whispering neighbors across the street, at my Mother, who had appeared in the doorway, her hand over her heart, her eyes filled with a terrifying, breathtaking pride. He had lost. He knew it. Officer Reyes, seizing the opportunity to escape, tipped his hat. Well, everything seems to be in order here. It's a family matter now. We'll be going. Have a good day. He and his partner turned and walked briskly to their car, leaving a crater in the middle of our family where my father's authority used to be. The neighbors began to disperse, their morning's entertainment over, rushing home to spread the story. I was left alone in the driveway with my defeated father and my silent, watching mother. The air was still and heavy. The war was over. I had won. Without another word, I turned my back on my father, walked past my mother, and went into my room. I pulled my old, worn backpack from the closet and began to fill it with my clothes. My life in this house was over. I had stood up, I had spoken my truth, and I had reclaimed what was mine. There was no going back. The silence in the house, after the police left, was louder than all the shouting that had come before. It was a vacuum, heavy with things unsaid, with the wreckage of what our family used to be. I packed my bag with a strange, detached calm. Each folded t-shirt, each pair of jeans, was a deliberate step away from the life I had known. My mother appeared in the doorway, her face a testament to the impossible position she was in caught between the husband she was bound to and the daughter she loved. She didn't say, "Don't go." She knew she couldn't. She knew I had to. Instead, she came into the room and began to help me pack, her movements small and efficient. She folded my clothes with a care that felt like a prayer. She didn't speak until the bag was almost full. "Irjite," she began, her voice a low whisper, as if he could hear us from the other room where he was nursing his wounded pride. "His heart is good, Maya, but his pride, it is a mountain. Too high to see over." He broke his own heart. "Nay," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I just stopped letting him break mine." She nodded, a single tear-filled acknowledgement. She pressed a small, thick envelope of cash into my hand. "Pabeon Keose Imo," she murmured. "Something for your journey. Don't refuse it." Mother must know her child is eating. She also handed me a paper bag, heavy and warm, filled with freshly cooked rice and the pork adobo I loved. It was an act of rebellion in its own quiet way, an endorsement. Her love, packed for the road. Hugged her tightly, burying my face in her shoulder, breathing in her familiar scent of soap and comfort. "I love you, Nay. I love you too, Anak Ko. Be safe," she whispered, her tears finally falling onto my shirt. "And be strong." I shouldered my bag, took one last look at the small room that had been my entire world, and walked out. I didn't see my father or Laya. It was better that way. I walked down the driveway, the gravel crunching under my feet, and I did not look back. The ghosts of my childhood could stay there. I was going to find a new life. The reunion with my car in Kuya Marlin's garage was a quiet, holy moment. I uncovered her, and she gleamed in the dim light, a patient red beast waiting for me. This time, as I slid into the driver's seat, the feeling wasn't one of frantic escape, but of profound homecoming. This car wasn't just a machine. She was my partner, my co-conspirator. My vessel of freedom. The drive from San Jose to Iloilo City was a baptism. With every kilometer I put between myself and Sabalong, I felt a layer of my old life sloughing off. I drove along the coast of Antique, the turquoise sea on my right, the green, rolling mountains on my left. The beauty of it was sharp and painful, and wonderful all at once. I was seeing it with new eyes. Not as a place to be trapped, but as a place to be from. The car handled the winding roads with an easy grace, the engine a steady, reassuring hum. It was the sound of my own resilient heart. Iloilo City was a different world. a sprawling, bustling, vibrant organism of commerce and culture. It was intimidating, but it was also filled with the promise of anonymity and opportunity. I found a small, clean room for rent in a boarding house in Mola district, paid the deposit with the money my mother had given me, and began the slow, daunting process of building a life from scratch. The first few weeks were hard. I was lonely. The independence I had craved was sometimes a heavy blanket of responsibility. But every evening, I would go to where I'd parked my car on the street, check on her, sometimes just sit inside for a few minutes to remember why I was doing this. She was my anchor. She was the reason. My search for a job was a lesson in humility. Shop after shop turned me away. They saw a young woman, not a mechanic. They'd smile politely and say they weren't hiring, their eyes dismissing the grease I could never quite scrub from under my fingernails. Finally, I found a place on the outskirts of the city, an old, sprawling auto shop called Benitez and Sons. The sign was faded, the building was cluttered, but the sounds coming from within were serious. The sound of real work. The owner was a man in his late 60s, whom everyone called Mang Tony. He was wiry and tough, with oil etched into the lines of his hands. He looked me up and down, his expression deeply skeptical. "You're a mechanic?" He grunted, wiping his hands on a rag. "Yes, sir," I said. "I have 3 sons, and not one of them can properly tune a carburetor." "What makes you think you can?" "Give me your hardest job," I said, my voice steady. "The car in the corner that no one else can figure out. If I can't diagnose the problem in 1 hour, I'll leave and never bother you again. If I can, you give me a trial run." He smirked, a crack in his leathery face. He was intrigued. He pointed with his chin towards a sad-looking, late-model SUV in the darkest corner of the shop. "The Ghost," he said. "Starts, runs for 3 minutes, then dies. No error codes. We've had it for a month. My best guys are stumped. You have 1 hour. It was a test." I walked over to the vehicle, my heart pounding. This was my one shot. I popped the hood. I didn't look at the engine first. I stood still and just listened. I listened to the silence. I smelled the air. Then I began to work. My process was methodical, the one my Lolo had taught me. Check the basics. Fuel, spark, air. The fuel pump was fine. The spark plugs were new, but the air, I traced the air intake system. Everything looked fine, but it felt wrong. After 45 minutes of tracing every wire and every hose, I found it. A tiny, almost invisible crack in the plastic housing of the mass airflow sensor, right on the underside. When the engine heated up, the plastic would expand just enough to open the crack, letting in unmetered air, confusing the computer and stalling the engine. When it cooled, the crack would close, leaving no trace. A ghost. I walked over to Mang Tony. "It's a hairline crack on the MAF sensor housing," I said. "It only opens up when the engine bay gets hot. You need to replace the whole unit." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he walked over to the SUV, grabbed a flashlight, and contorted himself to look where I had pointed. He was silent for what felt like a year. Finally, he straightened up, a look of grudging astonishment on his face. He turned to me. "What time can you start tomorrow?" he asked. Months passed, my life found a new rhythm. I thrived at Benitez and Sons. Mang Tony became a new Lolo figure for me, gruff and demanding, but fair. He respected skill, not gender. And my skill was undeniable. My coworkers, his sons, and a few other local guys treated me with a gruff, brotherly respect after I proved I could hold my own. I became their go-to person for diagnostics, for the weird, ghostly problems no one else wanted to touch. I was the car whisperer. I was valued. I was home. I saved my money. I sent some home to my mother every month, tucking it inside a letter, never mentioning my father or sister. It was my way of letting her know I was okay, that I was standing on my own 2 feet. One evening, after a particularly long and greasy day, I sat on the steps of my boarding house, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. A message notification lit up my phone. It was from my mother. It wasn't about money. It was just 3 short sentences. Kamusta kana, anak. Your tade is quieter now. He misses you, even if his pride will never let him say it. I stared at the words, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a pang of sadness for the man who had hurt me so deeply. I understood what my mother meant. He was a man from a different time, trapped in a mountain of his own making. Maybe one day he would learn how to climb down. Maybe one day we could speak again. The message wasn't an apology, not yet. But it was a beginning, a small crack in the wall of silence, a thread of hope. I didn't reply, but I saved the message. The story wasn't over. It was just entering a new chapter, one that would be written on my terms. The next Sunday, my day off, I gave the Corolla a thorough wash and a wax. It was a ritual, an act of love. She gleamed under the Iloilo sun, a testament to our shared journey. I got in the driver's seat, now molded perfectly to my shape, and went for a drive. I ended up on the coastal road, the sea a brilliant, glittering expanse to my left. I thought about everything that had happened. The rage, the betrayal, the quiet, satisfying act of reclamation. I had no regrets. I had done what was necessary. I had saved myself. My father had wanted to teach me a lesson about family duty, but instead, I had taught myself a lesson about self-worth. And I had taught him a lesson about the law, with the windows down and the sea breeze. In my hair, I drove. The engine, the one I had brought back from the dead, hummed its powerful, steady song. The steering wheel was firm in my hands. I was the creator, the mechanic. The driver, the owner. I was in complete control. Ahead of me, the road stretched on, a long, open ribbon of possibility, winding its way along the edge of the world. And I drove on, into the sunset, into the rest of my life. A year can change everything. The Maya who had fled Cybelum in a blaze of righteous fury was a different woman from the one who now managed the daily operations at Benitez and Sons. The city of Iloilo, once a daunting foreign landscape, had become my home. The grease under my fingernails was no longer a mark of defiance, but a simple fact of my profession. I had a life I had built with my own 2 hands, a life that was sturdy and reliable, like a well-tuned engine. My anger had cooled, leaving not a scar, but a smooth, hard surface of self-knowledge. I was at peace. It was a sweltering Saturday afternoon in July, the kind where the air itself feels sleepy. The shop was busy, a symphony of impact wrenches, compressors, and a low murmur of Mang Tony's radio playing old love songs. I was leaning over the open hood of a pickup truck, explaining a complex fuel injector issue to one of the younger mechanics, when a shadow fell over me. I looked up, expecting a customer, and my breath caught in my throat. Standing at the entrance to the garage, silhouetted against the blinding afternoon sun, was my father. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. The proud, unmovable mountain of a man who had shattered my world was now just a man. He wore a simple polo shirt and slacks, clothes he would wear to church, and he looked utterly lost amidst the organized chaos of my domain. He clutched a small paper bag in his hand like a lifeline. For a long moment, we just stared at each other across the greasy concrete floor. My team fell silent, sensing the sudden shift in the atmosphere. They looked from me to the old man at the door. Their curiosity piqued my heart, which I had thought was now a calm and steady thing, gave a painful lurch. Every instinct screamed at me to turn away, to retreat into the safety of my work. But the woman I was now didn't retreat. I wiped my hands slowly on a rag, took a deep breath, and walked towards him. The power dynamic of our entire lives had been reversed. This was my territory. He was the supplicant. Tete, I said. My voice was even, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. What are you doing here? He flinched at the cool, formal tone. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting around the shop at the half disassembled engines, the hanging tools, at my team of mechanics who were watching him with guarded expressions. He was seeing my life, the one I had built without him, and the sight of it seemed to diminish him further. Maya, he said, his voice raspy. Kamusta kana. I was in the city for a checkup. It was a clumsy lie. No one came from Antique to Iloilo for a routine checkup without calling first. I'm fine, Tate, I said. Is everything okay at home? Yes. Your mother is fine. Everyone is fine, he said quickly. An awkward, heavy silence descended between us. He was a man who had never been at a loss for words, a man whose voice had commanded every room he entered. Now he seemed to have forgotten how to speak. Let's go to the carinderia next door, I said, making a decision. It's too hot in here to talk. We sat at a small plastic table, a whirring electric fan doing little to stir the humid air. I ordered 2 glasses of ice-cold calamansi juice. He just stared at his hands, which were resting on the table. They looked older, the veins more pronounced. Mang Tony, your boss, he began, his voice still strained. He seems like a good man. He is, I said. He's fair. He respects good work. The unspoken comparison hung in the air between us. He nodded, taking a long drink of his juice. You have a good life here. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. A concession. I worked hard for it, I replied, my voice gentle but pointed. He finally looked up and met my eyes. The pride, the anger that I had last seen in them was gone. What remained was a deep, profound weariness, a sadness. I know, he said softly. You always have. He took a deep breath, like a man about to dive into deep water. Maya, the reason I am here, I'm sorry. The words, so simple, so long overdue, struck me with the force of a physical blow. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. I had imagined yelling, crying, demanding more. But now that it was here, all I could do was listen, my heart frozen in a state of suspended disbelief. I was wrong, he continued, his voice cracking. He looked away at the street outside, unable to hold my gaze. What I did to you, it was a terrible thing. I was a fool, blind. Your Lolo Ben, he trusted me to look after you. He loved that car, but he loved you more. He saw your gift. I was too stubborn to see it, too proud. He shook his head, a gesture of self-disgust. I thought a father's job was to be loud, to be in charge. I didn't realize a father's job was to see his children and to be proud of what he sees. I see you now, Maya, and I'm so proud of you. Tears were streaming down his face now, silent tears he made no move to wipe away. The mountain was crumbling, and seeing him so broken, so humbled, I felt no triumph, only a deep, aching sadness for all the years we had lost. He pushed the small paper bag he had been clutching across the table towards me. This is from Laya, he said. I opened it. Inside was a small, hand-stitched leather keychain. It was beautifully made with the outline of a vintage car embossed on it. Tucked inside was a folded piece of paper. I opened it. It was a letter from my sister, her handwriting a familiar, looping scrawl. 8 Maya, it began. I know saying sorry isn't enough. I was a stupid, spoiled kid. I never thought about how much work you did. I just thought about myself. University is hard. Life is hard. I'm learning that now. Today misses you all the time. He never says it, but he sits in the garage sometimes, just looking at the empty space. I hope one day you can forgive us. I hope one day you'll come home and visit. I folded the letter, my own eyes blurring with tears. The apology I never knew I needed. The one I had told myself didn't matter, but it did. She's growing up, my father said quietly. You taught her a lesson I never could. You us both. He didn't ask me to come back. He didn't ask me for anything. He just sat there, a father who had traveled a long way to lay down his pride at his daughter's feet. And I was faced with a choice. I could hold on to my anger, the righteous shield that had protected me for so long. Or I could put it down. I could let the past be the past and choose to build something new on the ruins of the old. Made my choice. Let me give you a ride to the bus terminal, Tay, I said, my voice thick with emotion. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with a fragile, dawning hope. We walked back to the shop. I led him not to the front, but around to the back where my car was parked in my designated spot. She was clean and polished, her red paint glowing in the late afternoon sun. My father stopped and just stared at her, his hand reaching out as if to touch a holy relic before letting it drop to his side. She is still beautiful, he whispered. I take care of her, I said. I unlocked the passenger door for him. A small gesture of courtesy that felt monumental. He got in, his movements slow and careful, as if he were afraid of breaking something. I slid into the driver's seat. The silence in the car was different now. It wasn't the tense, angry silence of our old life. It was a quiet, contemplative space. A space where something new could grow. We drove through the city, the low rumble of the engine, a familiar comfort. The car, the object of our great conflict, was now the vessel of our fragile, newfound peace. When we reached the terminal, I pulled over to the curb. He didn't move to get out right away. He looked at the dashboard, his hand hovering over it. He ran a finger over the smooth, restored surface. You're Lolo, he said, his voice full of a deep, ancient grief. He would be so proud of you. Maya, so proud. It was the validation I had craved my entire life. Not from a boss, not from a customer, but from him. And it healed a wound I didn't even know was still bleeding. He finally turned to me, his eyes clear. Come visit for Christmas, he said, if you want to. Your Nene would love it. We all would. I'll think about it, Tay, I said. And I meant it. He nodded, accepting that this was all he could ask for right now. He got out of the car, closed the door gently, and gave me one last look through the window. It was a look of love, of regret, of peace. Then he turned and walked into the bustling terminal, disappearing into the crowd. I watched him go. Then I put the car in gear and drove away. I drove back towards my life, my job, my home. The keychain from Laya was on the passenger seat. The bridge back to my family was there, waiting. I didn't know if or when I would cross it, but for the first time, I knew it was possible. The road ahead was still mine to navigate, but I was no longer driving away from something. I was simply driving forward, and I was at peace.